Welcome to the Envirothon Fox and Coyote video. Have you ever wondered how to tell the difference between a fox and a coyote? Here's a hint, watch their tail when they run. You will learn that and much more in this video. Take it away, Ranger Mullen.
All right, so we're going to move into the wild canines of Pennsylvania, and we have several. We'll start off with our native, and that is the gray fox. Gray fox's habitat is typically heavily wooded, and so for you to find gray fox in Pennsylvania, you need to go to the northern tier countries and down through the center of the state where it's ridges and valleys. In Chester County, you might find gray fox in the northern part of the county in the big woods area, you know, French Creek and Hopewell and St. Peters and Warwick County Park. But this is our gray fox. You notice he's gray all over, dark center line on the back, though he does have some red to him. He has some red on the sides of the neck and behind the ears. He's got some red on the flanks, a little on the tail. And I've seen gray fox with far more red than this particular specimen. Again, this is typical, but you always have individual variations. And so one of the things that I usually point out to know you're looking at a gray fox is to look at the tail. If the tail is tipped in black, it is a gray fox, always and forever. Okay? These guys are very, very good predators. They will go after all kinds of critters, smaller than they are, up to their size, and they're pretty secretive. You kind of have to be in the right place at the right time to eyeball one of these. They are usually pretty quiet, except when mating season comes in, and then they can be very, very vocal and sound like anything other than a fox. And this is the native species of fox in Pennsylvania. The non-native species of fox in Pennsylvania is the red fox. Most people don't know that this animal does not hail from our country. It comes from Europe. And so somewhere along the way, colonists from Europe must have brought red foxes with them. And whether it was by design or by accident, they got out of their pens, they got into the wilds of Pennsylvania, and they have done so well to the point that they are treated as though they are native. They differ in their habitat use from the gray fox. Gray foxes like the heavily wooded areas, red fox like open agricultural areas with patchy woods, which is why in Chester County we have a lot of red foxes. And you can see that they are reddish all over, not fire engine red, more of a rusty red or an orange color, which is typical when you're talking about a red colored animal. You don't get the fire engine reds until you get into birds. So this is very typical of our red fox. I have seen red foxes with fur tipped in black, like here on the tail. And so it can be a little confusing as, oh wait, is that a gray? So again, go to the tail, and if it is tipped in white, I promise you it is a red fox. Now you have to be careful. I have seen red foxes with a nice big brush on the end of white, and I have seen red foxes with about 2 or 3 hairs of white. It's still white. So if you got a white tip, whether it's large or tiny, it's a red fox. Red fox also has black socks. We do not have the entire leg here, but from the joint down to the foot is black. The back of the ears on the red fox is also black. Again, predators that are very good at what they do. Both species are considered to be nocturnal, but like the raccoon in the spring and summer months, you might see these guys out and about hunting. Very susceptible, for some reason, the foxes, particularly the red fox, very susceptible to a condition called mange. Mange is caused by a mite that gets under the skin. It causes drying of the skin and severe itching. They lose their fur. They lose the ability to stay warm, and so they start to hunt more and more and more to get fuel to fire the furnace. Well, even when they're perfectly healthy, hunting at best is a 40% successful venture. So they get weaker and weaker and weaker, and eventually what happens is a good cold night comes along and they don't make it. And that's mange. Very contagious from fox to fox. So if there's contact between foxes and one fox has the mite, now they both have the mite. And in fact, it's an indication of generally how the fox population is doing in a given area. You got lots of foxes, probably not much mange in the area. You have a lower population or a difficult population to find, you might have a higher incidence of mange taking place, which is knocking the population down. And then we have coyotes, and specifically the eastern coyote. And then one of the things that you need to know about eastern coyote, though this is typical in the coyote's appearance, they do have some gray wolf DNA in their genome, which means that they can have many different appearances. They can be black, they can be red, like a fox, they can be gray, like a fox, they can be tricolored, like your neighbor's German Shepherd. Many different appearances. And I've seen coyotes in Chester County that have many different colors. In the New London area, I saw a really leggy red fox get up in front of me one afternoon, and it made me pause, because boy, did that have a long leg to it. And after getting my binoculars up, I realized I was looking at a red-phased coyote. So coyotes, what are we looking for identification purposes? No matter their color, they're almost always a rusty red color behind the ears. Even a coyote that's melanistic or black, if you take it out into natural lighting in the sunlight, you'll see that rusty color behind the ears. Frequently down the center of the back, you'll have a dark line. If you have the entire leg to the sample you are looking at, you'll see a dark line starting under the leg, going down to the joint. It'll come around and run right down the center line of the leg to the foot. Very diagnostic. The tail is usually quite full and bushy, could be white tipped, could be black tipped. That depends on the individual variation of color. Coyotes have a mane, not like a lion. Their mane occurs between their shoulder blades. So you can see it. It's not real developed on this particular specimen, but you can see it. This longer tuft of fur right here is a coyote's mane, and I've seen it much more developed on other specimens that I've handled, where it's quite noticeable, to the point where even if the animal is walking, you might notice that fur will be, as a function of the shoulders working, it moves. Or on a windy day, you'll see this really blowing around a lot. At a distance, you might have difficulty determining, is that a coyote, is that a fox, or is that my neighbor's dog? So I want you to think about want you to think about your dog. If you have one and he has a long tail, how does he carry his tail? Most dogs carry them horizontal or up. Coyotes don't do that. The tail of the coyote just hangs down in a natural flow. Even when they're moving. Red fox is moving, the tail's streaming out behind him. Coyote's moving, the tail's hanging down. Natural flow. So that's your first clue. You see that canine in the woods beside your house or in the field beside your house. If the tail's up, go tell your neighbor his dog got out again. Okay, if the tail's down, you might want to be grabbing your binoculars to try to find more cues if you're looking at a coyote or not. When it comes to footprints, and we'll show you an example of those in a minute, but I just want to let you know that between the coyote and the fox, the coyote's front foot is very narrow, and it's almost elliptical in shape if you were to draw a line around the footprint, whereas like most dogs, the fox is more round. And the toenails will show only the front two toes on the front foot of a coyote, whereas you'll see all four on foxes. And again, we'll show you that here in a bit. Skulls can also help you identify these critters. Again, very large canines, pointed molars tells you that this is a predator. This is a red fox skull. And a skull is made up of multiple bones. It's not just one bone. Multiple bones that grow together and form squiggly lines on the bone called sutures. And on the red, I keep saying gray fox, on the red fox skull, the sutures, at least two of them, come back on the skull and form a very sharp V. On the gray fox, those sutures come back and they form a more shallow angle. It looks more like a U. It can be hard to discern, but the difference is there. And the reason that can be important is if you see the V, And you know that the Latin designation for a red fox is Vulpes vulpes. You got the V for Vulpes. This is a red fox skull. So just a little trick that you might be able to look at. For size comparison, we'll look at two things. We'll look at the skulls and the furs. Red fox, gray fox would be just a little bit smaller. Coyote, much, much larger. Much, much larger. And I want you to see the differences in the furs as well. You will notice that the red and gray foxes are very similar in size. The gray is typically a little bit smaller versus our coyote. Okay, so in Chester County, our typical red fox is about 12 pounds. And gray foxes run just a little smaller than that. Coyotes in Pennsylvania, the eastern coyote can get up to 65 pounds. Typical is 40 to 50 pounds. Females usually run about 5 pounds off the male, but they can get quite large. And this is a big predator for Pennsylvania. They are found everywhere in the state. We have 67 counties in Pennsylvania. We have coyotes in 67 counties, including places like Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh. They come in after food that we readily provide. Many of us live in areas where there are lawns and low-hanging shrubs and bushes, and that's a recipe for rabbits. That's a food source for this guy. Many of us have cats, and some of us put our cats out at night, and if Fluffy doesn't return, yeah, you might have met a coyote, and that's an easy food source for a coyote. In big cities, free-roaming house cats, rats, are food sources that coyotes will exploit. And they have been seen all over the state.